I have been close to the community of persons with disabilities for my entire life. My father, Professor John Golding, pioneered Jamaica's only fully integrated rehabilitation center in response to the polio epidemic. That was in the 1950s. It used to be called Mona Rehab, and it was renamed in his honor after he passed in 1996. He also founded the Hope Valley Experimental School, the only institution in Jamaica that is specifically dedicated to educating children with disabilities and able-bodied children together in an integrated environment. And two of my parliamentary colleagues, the one to my left, the shadow spokesman of finance, and the one behind me, our shadow spokesman for transport, are proud graduates of Hope Valley Experimental School. And Mr. Speaker, my late mother, who died in September last year, she started her career as a public servant, but in the 1960s, when she got married and had children, she left that and went to work on an essentially voluntary basis at the rehabilitation center, and she spent the rest of her working life there. So as a child, I was at the center frequently on Christmas Day and on other occasions. So I grew up with persons with disabilities around me, and I felt that that was a very normal way of living. I was very engaged and encouraged when the Portia Simpson Miller administration passed the Disabilities Act in 2014. That act gives effect to Jamaica's obligations under the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And under her leadership, Jamaica stepped proudly forward as the first state to sign it. The World Health Organization estimates that approximately 16% of the country's population has some form of disability, yet less than 1% of the annual budget goes to addressing the needs of this community. Much more really needs to be done to empower persons with disabilities to be fully included in all aspects of national life. And Mr. Speaker, with my family background, I am committed to making this happen. We must always remember that disability respects no one. So we must create a society that is fully inclusive of all our citizens, mindful that any one of us can become disabled at any time. Mr. Speaker, the next PNP government will establish a national disability fund with specific allocations from the consolidated fund dedicated to financing initiatives to empower persons with disabilities. These initiatives will include funding the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, greater support for the major organizations catering to disability groups, funding assistive technologies for persons with disabilities, improving sidewalks for the use by persons with disabilities, which is a big issue, and supporting the education of persons with disabilities at the tertiary level. Mr. Speaker, and I want to take this opportunity at this moment to extend congratulations to Jamaica's Special Olympics team, who are back from Italy with 3 gold medals, 2 silver medals, and 2 bronze. You have made us proud. Mr. Speaker, our senior citizens constitute a critical mass of our population who spend their working lives helping to build the country. Data shows that seniors comprise over 13% of the population, and the trajectory is that this percentage is growing steadily. We're an aging population. And with an aging population, we must put in place measures to protect this vulnerable group. All too often, Mr. Speaker, I receive complaints from retired public servants of the long delays, sometimes years, before they start receiving the pension to which they're entitled after they retire. And then there are the frequent complaints by senior citizens that their pension payments are not being paid on time. Mr. Speaker, all of this needs to stop. The next PNP government commits to fixing these problems so that retired persons receive their pension entitlements on a timely basis. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, I think it was, I endorsed a motion brought in the Senate by Professor Senator Lloyd Morris calling for legislation to protect senior citizens. That motion received the unanimous approval of the Senate, and a special select committee of the Senate has been established to examine the scope and modalities of the legislation and to make recommendations for action. The next PNP government will enact comprehensive legislation to protect senior citizens. We will also strengthen linkages between key agencies of government that serve senior citizens who need to get life certificates, for example, and other documents. We envisage also the greater use of mobile units to reach more seniors, especially those living in remote areas. Time comes for a new deal for our seniors.